Hello, Ms. Rom class, and welcome to your guided reading lesson for today, where we'll be continuing Ice Palace. I hope you enjoyed the first bit yesterday. To start, we're going to go through our words. Our first word is weary, which means tired or fed up. Our second word is to clutch. Can you do an action if you're clutching something? It means you're holding it very tightly. Avalanche, which is when snow, ice and rocks slide down a mountain. So not just a little bit of snow or some rocks, a lot of it, and it gets pushed down a mountain, and it's very dangerous if you're on the mountain or at the bottom because you might get squashed or buried. Ghastly, another word for awful. Fiddle, a type of violin. And the last adjective, hypnotic, which is an adjective here. For example, a hypnotic glow would be a glow that makes someone sleepy or mesmerise, like when someone tries to hypnotise you. Now we've gone through those, have a look out for them throughout the reading today. We're going to continue where we left off from yesterday. Can you remember what happened in yesterday's reading? Pause the video and have a think. We've got a clue in the picture here. Ready? So, Ivan was hiding and because he couldn't find his way back to his snowdrift when an owl flew overhead. What do we think the owl might do? Why is the owl there? Let's find out. He jerked his head round and saw a white shape that flew soundlessly between the trees. So without a noise, it's silent. As he watched, it settled on a branch and stared at him with great yellow eyes. "Go away, Snowy Owl," he whispered. "Go away and find a mouse to eat. I'm no use to you. I'm no use to anyone." The owl leapt from its perch with a scream, circled his head on velvet wings, and made off through the forest. After a moment it came back and flew round his head again. "Perhaps," thought Ivan, "it wants me to follow it." He was becoming very weary, so very tired. But when the great white bird flew away again, he followed. Where do you think the bird is taking him? Is it a trick? Has Starjig sent the bird? In a few moments he saw the snowdrift in which he had made his shelter. Do you remember he'd lost it before because of the wind? He fell to his knees by the entrance and crawled inside with the last of his strength. The snowy owl circled the snowdrift once again and was gone. So what did the snowy owl do? Pause the video, have a think, have a chat. So the snowy owl showed him back to where he was taking shelter. So I don't think the owl was sent by Starjig. It was there to help Ivan. When dawn came, Ivan wrapped himself up in his warm clothing and set out again. There was only a little bread left now in his pocket, and he knew he must save it, for he still had far to go. What could he do if he runs out of bread? Where else could he find food from? Pause the video. It might be a little bit tricky because it's winter and not much grows in winter, and on the cover we can see all the trees are bare. But he could, I guess, hunt some animals. Let's see what he does. The wind was strong and the snow was deep, and Ivan went very slowly with his head down. All at once he felt the snow shift and he cried out. Beneath his feet a great crack opened up and lumps of snow as big as houses fell into it with a hissing roar. He flung himself forward, trying to reach the other side. His mittens grabbed at the lip of the crack, but it crumbled and he was falling. Desperately, he clutched at a tiny fir tree, so he's holding on really tightly, that grew outward from the side of the crack. It was so small that he knew it would never hold him. His weight would pull it out by the root, and he would fall. Down, down, with the tumbling snow blocks to be buried forever in the bottom of the crack. But the little fir tree held. It jerked him to a stop and held, and he dangled by one arm, so he's holding on with one hand. He dangled by one arm over the drop as an avalanche of snow hurtled roaring into the chasm. So you can see this is part of the avalanche. All of the rocks falling down into the crack, which is the chasm. After he could never tell how long he hung there. He only knew that at last the avalanche stopped and he scrambled his way somehow out of that ghastly crack. For a long time he lay in the snow, sobbing with fright at the horrible fate he had escaped. Which word here is another word for crying? That's right, sobbing, when you're crying a lot. Then wearily he got to his feet and brushed the snow from his clothes with his mittened hands. His heart was heavy. What does it mean if your heart was heavy? This is a show, not tell emotion. If your heart is heavy, it means you're sad and you're worried. Something's bothering you. You feel a little bit hopeless. His heart was heavy, and if it had not been for the crack that now blocked the way, he might have given up and returned to his distant home. As it was, he sighed. Can everyone sigh? Turned his face into the north wind and went on. Why is he facing the north wind? What do we know from earlier in the story about the north? That's right, Starjig comes from there. Presently it began to grow dark. I must find another snowdrift, said Ivan to himself. He sighed. Long ago, when his father had taught him how to make a snow den, it had been fun. Now it just seemed like hard work. Snow dens are quite warm, he thought. But they are not like my little bed at home. The sky was a deep grey, turning black when Ivan found his snowdrift. He fell to his knees and began to scrape out a tunnel with his mittened hands. After a moment he stopped, his head tilted to one side. From far away, carried on the wind, he thought he heard music. He listened. The pine trees creaked and sighed, and snow powder hissed over the frosty crust. Then he heard it again. It was the sound of a fiddle. A fiddle, it's a violin. Ivan screwed up his eyes and shook his head fiercely. No, it was not real. It could not be real. It was another cruel trick to hurt him, to keep him from doing what he must do. He began once more to scrape at the snow, whistling a little between his teeth to blot out the sound of the fiddle. So to blot out means to block out. Who might be tricking him? Could be Starjig, so that Starjig wants him to follow the noise, a little bit like when he thought he heard his brother. But when he stopped, there it was, rising and falling in the wind. He got to his feet and gazed towards the sound, biting his lip. There was a faint glow in the sky beyond the pines. And now he was sure there were voices too, mixed in with the fiddle. There's a glow in the distance. Maybe some houses. Maybe some people living here at the bottom like you can see. He looked down at the unfinished den, then out again towards the glow. It seemed real, all of it. The fiddle, the voices, and the glow. He saw a picture in his mind of people, happy people who laughed and shouted and danced to a fiddle, and suddenly he was overcome with loneliness. He left the snowdrift and began hurrying through the trees, his eyes fixed on that warm, hypnotic glow. So we've got our word, hypnotic. So, looks like the glow is mesmerising him. He's hypnotised by it. He wants to follow it. He can't focus on anything else apart from the glow. He came out of the trees onto a long slope, and there below him lay a village. Lamplight glowed warmly in all its windows and spilled out of open doorways onto a crowded street. Everyone in the village seemed to be out of doors, and when Ivan looked down the street he could see why. At the far end of it, someone had built an enormous fire. Its flames rose high in the air, and the snow all around was pink with its glow. And the music! It wafted in great clouds up the slope, and Ivan had never heard such music. He was weary, but he wanted to dance. He was far from his home, yet he felt like shouting. And up towards him, their laughter spangling the night, came children, a long ribbon of children hand in hand running up the hill. When they drew near, they stopped, and their leader, smiling, holding out his hand to Ivan. Come, he said, tonight is a feast, and you are welcome here. And though it was winter, and though the night was a cold one, these children had on summer clothes, and all the girls wore flowers in their hair. In the village below the fiddles began a fresh tune. The line of children stirred restlessly, like a string of spirited ponies. The boy beckons, so he's encouraging him to come forward. His smile invited. Come, he said once more. My friends would dance, and stepping forward, Ivan slipped off a mitten and gave his hand. At once they went whirling away across the slopes and down to where the people danced through pools of lamplight on the snow. Wonder why they're wearing summer clothes if it's winter. Do we think it's real, or is it part of his imagination? Or is it a trick? Ivan's skipping. How is he feeling? That's a show, not tell feeling as well. If he's skipping. When would you skip? Maybe when you're happy. Ivan, skipping, threw back his head and laughed. The line had reversed itself so that now the last child had become the first and was leading them on to the street. Once in the village, they did not keep to the street, but began threading themselves like a many-coloured serpent to and fro between the houses. So a serpent is another word for snakes. They're weaving in and out of the houses. Once their leader took them through the doorway of a house, and Ivan had a glimpse of tables, chairs, and a big tiled stove before he was whirled out again into the night. People were everywhere, but if anyone noticed a stranger in their midst, no one seemed to mind, so they don't mind that Ivan's there. The music grew louder, and coming round the corner of a house, Ivan saw that they were close to the great fire. In the flames an ox was roasting, and nearby on upturned barrels sat the fiddlers. So they're the people playing the violin, and we call them fiddlers. Their bows flashed back and forth across the strings of their fiddles, and they tapped their feet in time upon the beaten snow. The line of children circled, forming a ring with the fiddlers in the middle. Round and round they whirled, the firelight dancing in their eyes. Personification. The fire is dancing. It's made to seem alive like a person. Then the circle broke, and the child who had led them was thrust into the centre, so they were pushed into the centre, among the fiddlers, and the tune changed, and she danced a special dance for them while they went round and round. When her dance was finished, the girl rejoined the circle. The next child was pushed forward, and the tune changed again. Ivan watched through tears of joy. The cold was gone, and the loneliness. What would be the tune when his turn came, and what steps would he dance? If you were put into this situation and you had to dance in the middle of the circle, what song would you choose? How would you dance? Pause the video and have a think. If you've got any ideas about this, after you've done your questions, I'd love you to upload a picture of you maybe dancing to your portfolio to your favourite song, just like Ivan might do in the middle of this circle. Before we finish today, we're going to do 4 fastest finger first questions. Ready? The first one we're going to do is we're going to go to... Oh, where's our snowy owl page? Here. We're going to go to page 34 just after the snowy owl page. Are we ready? Fastest finger first. Put your finger on a word that means tired. This is an easy one. We had it in our keywords. Scan the page. Pause the video. Weary. My turn, your turn. Weary. Let's say it in a tired voice. Weary. Your turn. Good job. Okay, page 37. 3 questions to go. Why is the crack dangerous? What is happening that is dangerous? You could have several answers here. I'm going to give you a little bit longer. Pause the video. Ready? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ready with your finger? So you might have that he clutched at the tiny fir tree and it was so small that it wouldn't hold him. So you might have it was dangerous because Ivan's holding onto a branch that might snap. What's the second bit? Look at the bottom of the page. It's the avalanche of snow which could hit him. So that's our second one. Did you get that one? Good job. We're going to go to page 40. 2 more questions to go. What does Ivan see in the distance? Again, could have several answers. What does he see? Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1. So he could see a glow. And he also thought he saw happy people who laughed and shouted. Did you get that one? Last one. We're going to go to page 43. Last fastest finger first. Ready? What does the little boy who Ivan meets ask him to do? What does he do? What does he ask him to do? Ready? 3, 2, 1. So he asks him to come to the feast. Well done if you got all of those right. It's now time to do your own questions from your portfolio. Thanks for tuning in. Have a lovely evening and stay safe.